Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our very first hangout in our day celebrating amazing women in science and exploration. It's going to be a full day of hangouts going from 8 till 4:30 Eastern. We've got a great group joining us for our first group of hangouts. We've got classes joining us from Germany, from India, class in the US joining us, and I'm here in Canada hosting. My name's Joe Grabowski. And our guest today, Ruth Leeney, is joining us in South Africa. So that's correct, Ruth, right? South Africa?
Yeah.
All right. So it's going to be a great hangout to kick things off. For those who don't know Ruth Leeney is a biologist, a social scientist, and a writer. Her work focuses on conservation of marine biodiversity in developing countries. So she works to benefit both the ecosystems as well as the human communities. She's the Sawfish Conservation Officer for the International Union of Conservation of Nature, shark specialist group. She's also the founder and director of Protect Africa's Sawfish. And so that's an organization that does research on sawfish and other flat sharks in developing countries. Ruth, it's so great to have you kicking things off today. I know our students are really excited to learn a little bit about what you do.
Thanks, Joe. I guess I should share my screen at this point, right?
That would work. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see me?
We can see your Google Hangout screen. You just need to pull up the PowerPoint now.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon in Mumbai, and Guten Tag to Germany. I hope you guys are all doing well. And thanks so much for joining me for this talk. So I'm going to speak to you today about my work, which is on sawfish, mostly in developing countries, especially in Africa. And this slide here is just to show you what a sawfish looks like. I'm not sure if many of you will have seen a sawfish before. They're pretty amazing looking animals. So they're basically like a ray, a flattened kind of shark, and then they have a long saw at the front of their head, which gives them their name. So what are sawfish? Well, in English, we have three kinds of animals with kind of similar names, and those animals are shown here. So I just thought I'd show you this picture so that you can be clear about what we're talking about. So on the right hand side you see a swordfish, and that's a large bony fish, so it doesn't belong to the family of sharks and rays, and it's got a long sword just with a single point on it, coming from the tip of its head. Then on the left hand side we've got a saw shark, and underneath it we've got a sawfish, and the one at the bottom, the sawfish, is the one that I do research on. Saw sharks look very similar superficially, but in fact they're completely different to sawfish. Saw sharks are true sharks, so they belong to the same family as other sharks that you I'm sure are familiar with, like great white sharks, whale sharks, basking sharks, those kind of things. And saw sharks are much smaller. They only reach about 1.5 meters in length. And they also, they look a little bit different to sawfish when you know what you're looking for. So you might be able to see the gill slits that the saw shark breathes through, and those are on the side of its body there. Whereas for the sawfish, which actually belongs to the same family as rays, like manta rays, this animal's gill slits that it breathes through are on the undersurface or the ventral surface of its body. Sawfish also get to be much, much bigger than saw sharks. So as I said, saw sharks are up to about 1.5 meters, and sawfish are able to grow up to about 7 meters in length. So I'm now just going to show you a quick video so that you can see what sawfish look like in real life. Ooh. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you over the video.
Oh, you can hear the video, can you?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay. So this just shows a sawfish that a diver encountered recently off the coast of Florida in the US. And that's one of the few spots left in the world where you can still find large numbers of sawfish. Okay. And so a lot of people ask me what the sawfish's saw is for. So I wanted to show you this image, which shows it quite nicely. The saw of the sawfish has a lot of sensory organs in it. They're very, very small little holes that run along the length of the saw. And they are able to detect electrical signals from prey, like fish that are swimming close to the sawfish. So the sawfish uses its saw to detect those fish, to find out where they are, and then it swims up to the fish. And then, as you can see on the right-hand side here, it swings the saw from side to side, and it uses it to club or stun the fish so that it can kill it and then it can eat it. So it's a very effective weapon that the sawfish has developed in order to be able to hunt and catch food. This photo just shows you how big sawfish can become. So an adult sawfish can reach up to 7 meters in length. And this photo is of a saw shark. So you can see that even though it's an adult saw shark, it's much smaller. It's only about a meter, a little over a meter long. Its teeth are much smaller, much finer. And you can just about see the gill slits on the side of the animal, just behind its eyes. And of course, the gill slits on the sawfish are on the undersurface of the animal. So why do I work on sawfish? Well, the main reason that I do research and conservation on sawfish is because they have become very rare. And we need people to get involved in order to protect sawfish in any of the places where they still exist. So this map of the world just shows you the areas where sawfish used to exist. We call this the historic species richness. And the colors that you see around each of the country's coastlines represent the number of different species of sawfish that used to live in those waters. So there are 5 species of sawfish in total. And you can see that around the coast of the US, we had 1 species up here along the East Coast, and 2 species around Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico, 2 species around Brazil, 2 species along the west coast of Africa, and also 2 species along the east coast. And you can see that over here in northern Australia, around Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and up into Asia was where the greatest species richness occurred. In other words, there were up to 4 species of sawfish living in this area in the past. And we think that in the past, there were sawfish living in the waters of about 90 countries worldwide. So they really were animals that were quite common throughout the tropics and subtropics. And this map shows what we think the situation is today. So let's just go back to that first map. And you can see that they're distributed throughout the tropics and subtropics. And now there's a lot of empty spaces where there used to be sawfish. And what that means, unfortunately, is that in a lot of countries, we think that sawfishes are now locally extinct. So you can see, for example, that all along the west coast of Africa, where there used to be sawfish living, there are now very few sawfish left, and they may only still exist in the waters of 1 or 2 countries. Also around Florida and the US, sawfish seem to have disappeared from the west coast, or excuse me, from the east coast, but there is still 1 species left in the waters around Florida. And how about India, since we have some spectators from Mumbai today? We think there are still 2 species of sawfish in Indian waters, but there's been very little research done in this area. So maybe you guys can do some research in the future and find out more about sawfish in India. So we think now that 20 countries have lost all the sawfishes they used to have, and that an additional 40 countries have lost at least 1 species of sawfish. And that's all happened in the last 20 or 30 years, really. So why are sawfish populations disappearing? Well, unfortunately, sawfish get caught a lot in fishing gear. This old photo shows a fisherman whose line has become tangled up with the saw of a sawfish, and especially fishing nets. Sawfish get very easily entangled in any kind of fishing net, and once they're tangled up in that, it's really difficult for them to get out. Another problem for sawfish is the shark fin industry. So some of you might have heard that in many countries, people catch sharks and they cut the fins off them, and they sell those fins to Asia, especially China, where people like to eat shark fin soup. So because more and more people want to eat shark fin soup now, more and more fishermen are trying to catch sharks and cutting their fins off, and that means that the sharks don't survive and shark populations are declining. And unfortunately, sawfish fins, even though sawfishes are rays and not sharks, but people also like to use sawfish fins for the shark fin soup. And finally, one of the biggest threats to sawfish is the destruction of their habitat. So when we try to build on land close to the coast, or if we cut down mangrove forests, like you see in this photo, what happens is that the safe habitat that baby sawfish use, which is waters close to the coastline, especially mangrove areas that have a lot of mangrove roots where baby sawfish can hide, those areas disappear. And that means that the young sawfish have nowhere to live until they reach a big enough size that they can go out into the open ocean. So that has an effect on how many young sawfish survive into adulthood. So I guess some of you might like to know what I do for my job. And this photo shows me doing some field work in Madagascar, getting very muddy. This is in a mangrove area, and I work a lot in these kinds of areas where fishermen are launching their boats from mangroves, going out into the mangrove creeks or even out to sea to fish. And I tend to go and speak to the fishermen to find out, first of all, whether they have ever seen a sawfish, whether it's something that they catch often. So here's a little short video that just shows you some of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of years. So I go to fish markets, or I go to areas where fishermen launch their boats, and I'll talk to them about sawfish. I'll also ask them if they have any saws from sawfish. So this was a fisherman in Mozambique and another fisherman here who had caught sawfish in the past, and they sometimes keep the saw and put it up in their house as a decoration. When I measure the saw and I photograph it, and from taking measurements, I can tell what kind of sawfish, what species of sawfish it came from. And that involves counting the number of teeth on the saw and looking at the general shape. and I'll just show you another little video. So I also do some education work in the communities where I work. I go to local schools to talk to the children. I show them saws from Sawfish. Excuse me. And I also talk to the communities, to the fishermen and their wives. I ask them if they catch any sawfish, I'd like for them to let me know, or to let somebody in the local community know, who will pass the information on to me. We share posters with the schools, with the children, and we try to educate them about the importance of having balanced ecosystems. So having lots of different kinds of animals in their mangroves and in their oceans, which helps to keep them healthy. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop, and if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Thank you.
All right, Ruth, thanks so much for that great presentation. I think the students will definitely have a good idea of what a sawfish is, and just what the problem is, and they are in big trouble. So thank you so much for sharing, and of course thank you for the work you do protecting them, especially in the developing countries. All right, so we have a great group of classrooms joining us. In fact, we have a bonus group. The second group from Mumbai has jumped into the Hangout as well. So we have two groups joining us in Mumbai. They're going to take part in a Hangout at 8:30. So maybe what I'll do is let their microphone, I'll turn it on first and see if they have a quick question before they head off to the next Hangout.
Sure.
So, Vinyak, how are you?
Yeah, good, Joe. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see you guys. So this is a group in Mumbai, and about 60 kids.
Wow. Hello,
nice
everyone.
Hello. Hello, Bolivia.
So I know you're going to head off to a Hangout shortly about mountain climbing with TA, but do you guys have a question before you go?
Just give me a second.
Sure.
Pucho. Just a second. Yeah. Pucho. Just a second.
वो लोग क्या करते होंगे बोले जो बाथरूम या वॉशरूम जाना है?
नहीं, ये वो मछलियों के बारे में है. इसका कोई सवाल है? Okay, so this was kind of a bonus. हाँ, बोलो.
वो जो मछली जो सौ मछली के ना उसके जो ये थे ना, तो उसके जो दांत जैसे कि वो नुकीले थे.
Okay, so this session was kind of a bonus to us. So I have one of the students there called, her name is Pinky, and so we kind of jumped in the middle of the presentation. So what she's asking is the sawfish. So other than hunting, is there anything else they can do with that, or they do with that?
With the saw?
Yes. So they must have
no.
been.
They just use it for hunting.
सिर्फ शिकार के लिए उस चीज का काम होता है, और शिकार कैसे होगा जब वो नुकीले होंगे. तो हाँ. All right, thank you so much. I think that is all we have.
All right.
Okay,
well,
thank you so much.
Thanks for joining in. Keep your eye in your mailbox for the link for the other Hangout. Let's meet our other group joining us from Mumbai. There's a group of students from grade 2 to grade 6 from the Sparkle Science Academy. Your microphone's on if you have some questions.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
So the kids here want to ask that why did Ruth choose Sawfish as her research area?
Okay, that's a great question.
Why not some other species?
Sure. I did actually used to work on other species. I used to work on dolphins for 10 years. And then I learned about how endangered sawfish were. And I realized that even though there's a lot of research done on other kinds of sharks and rays in other parts of the world, in Africa, where I was doing a lot of work, there was nobody doing any research on sawfish. So I thought that was very surprising, because they're, you know, they're really amazing animals, and they get to be very big, and usually big, interesting looking animals like that. Usually a lot of people want to do research on them. So I was very surprised that nobody was doing research, and I thought, well, that might be something really interesting to do some research on. And also because the main reason why I like working on sawfish is because if we work with communities to protect sawfish, we also protect their habitats, like the mangroves and the coasts. And when we protect their habitats, we actually protect much more than just sawfish. We protect all the baby fish that live in those environments, and all the other animals that depend on those environments. And we also take care of the people who live in those areas. So by protecting sawfish, we're actually protecting the whole ecosystem, including the people in that area. And I thought that was something that seemed like a good use of my energy and my time.
All right, great question. Let's meet our next group. We have some grade 4s. They're joining us from Kaiserslautern, Germany. Mr. Flores' group. Let me turn your microphone on. Actually, they've been on a field trip this morning, so they're having a great little day today.
We were wondering, what is it like to be in Africa studying and finding sawfish?
What is it like? Can you be more specific?
As in, like, what is it like to be able to see the sawfish and like be able to like sometimes touch them?
Well, unfortunately, sawfish are so rare in Africa that I don't really see them very often. Mostly I just see the saws. So most of the live sawfish that I have seen during my research have been in Australia, when I've been helping a friend of mine who does research in the north of Australia. And that's really exciting when you catch a young sawfish in a net to do some research on it, and you get to see the real animal, a really rare animal in front of you. It's really exciting, and it's a privilege, you know. And of course, we have to work very quickly because they're very rare and endangered animals. So we don't want to take them out of the water for too long, and we don't want to stress them too much. So we have to work very quickly. We have to be very concentrated about what we do. But it's still, you know, to be able to do that is a great job. And if you like animals and you like being in the natural world, then, you know, I feel really lucky to be able to do my job.
All right, great question. And our final group who's joining us, they're joining us from Frederick, Maryland in the US. They're a grade 6 group. Let me turn your microphone on so you can come up and ask a question.
Thank you so much for facilitating this. Our question is, what kind of technology do you use on a daily basis in your job? And how does it help you further your research?
Sure, that's a great question. I'm actually a very simple researcher. So a lot of researchers, especially in more developed parts of the world like the US and Europe, use a lot of really fancy technology. People who work on sharks especially often put tags on the sharks so they can track them and find out where they go. Unfortunately, when you work in, well, not unfortunately, but in Africa, we know so little about a lot of the different shark and marine animals that live here, that we're not really at the point yet, at least for sawfish, where we need to use advanced technology. So my work is very simple. It involves talking to fishermen to find out areas where sawfish still exist. I don't need any technology for that. And then following that, I'll go to those areas and I'll do some fishing. So I use some fishing nets and I work with local fishermen, and we just put the nets in until we catch sawfish, and then we're doing that so that we can find out what species of sawfish exist there, what size they are they adults or are they juveniles, are they male, are they female? So it's very simple work right now. And a large part of my work also involves educating people in the communities and trying to encourage them not to catch sawfish, if that's possible. But in a lot of these places, people are quite poor. They don't have a lot of, in a lot of places, fish stocks are very much reduced and they don't catch as many fish as they used to. So sometimes when people catch a sawfish, they have to keep it because it might be the only thing they catch that day and they need to feed their families. So it's a very challenging environment to work in if you want to protect sawfish. But at the same time, it's very important to work with the communities and to help them to understand why it's important to protect sawfish, but look after the needs of the people at the same time. So yeah, not much technology involved with my work, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, great questions. I want to give a shout out as well. There were a couple classes who couldn't join us this morning on the East Coast. They'll be watching later, but as many know, there was a big dump of snow over the last day and a bit. So there's a few people who are still digging themselves out. We do have time. We can squeak in maybe another question or two. So why don't I jump to our class in Germany and see if they might have another question. Oh, lots of hands. Good.
Whoa.
Pizza, what's your question? Stand up and speak loud.
What's your favorite species?
Good question.
I can't hear, I'm afraid.
Okay, Jacob, nice and loud. Stand up.
What is your favorite thing about your job researching swordfish?
Sawfish.
Okay. Let me just check I heard that right. What is my favorite thing about my job researching sawfish? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My favorite thing. That's a tough question. I think it is that I get to travel a lot. I have done sawfish research in 6 different African countries and in a few other countries outside of Africa too. So I get to see a lot of different parts of the world, some of them very beautiful, some of them not so beautiful, some of them with protected environments, and some of them where people have not taken care of their environments so well. So it helps me to learn a lot about what we need to do to protect sawfish and to protect our environment. But I think that's my favorite thing. And also that I don't have to sit at a desk all day, every day, because I'm not a desk kind of person. So my job means that I get to, some days I'm in a fishing boat, some days I'm working on the beach, some days I'm interviewing people in fishing villages. So it means I get to be in a lot of different places, and I enjoy that. Thank you for a great question.
All right. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for kicking things off for us today.
Pleasure.
It's going to be just a great day of hangouts, and it was so great to have such a group spread right across the world. So thanks to everybody, especially our group in Mumbai who joined in, our group in Germany, our group in the US. It was great to have everybody. Before we sign off, Ruth, what can students do if they want to dig a little bit deeper into what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is, so here's let me share my screen. Okay. So I have a Facebook page for my project. So if any of you or maybe your parents or guardians or someone you know is on Facebook, they can check out this page. And I put news up about my project and lots of photos of the people that I meet, the fishermen, the fisherwomen, photos of sawfish, photos of saws from sawfish. So that's a good page to check out. And then I would also encourage you to check out the Sawfish Conservation Society web page. Hopefully it will come up. No. Okay, it's not coming up, but if you Google Sawfish Conservation Society, you will be able to find resources, including downloadable ID guides. So you can download a sheet which has a different picture of each sawfish species and how you can tell them apart. There are some games about sawfish on there. There's facts about each different sawfish species. And so that's a great page to visit if you want to learn more about sawfish.
All right. Well, thank you again, Ruth. It was an absolute pleasure to host you this morning. Thanks for kicking things off. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. I know for sure there's more students following your research now. We had a lot of viewers online as well, and there'll be more throughout the day. So thank you so much, Ruth.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone, for taking part. And I hope you enjoyed the talk.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We're signing off. Lots more talks throughout the day on our YouTube page.